A Harris County man is charged with murdering his daughter.
This after investigators tell us the woman died of an overdose from fentanyl that he allegedly gave her. ABC 13 Shannon Ryan joining us now live outside of the victim's Alief apartment, where police say this all took place. And Shannon, this is relatively a new charge for the Harris County District Attorney's Office.
Hey there, yes, it is. Back in 2023, the Texas legislature passed a law allowing for fentanyl murder charges. That was the same year this woman died. The Harris County District Attorney's Office tells me this case is one of the first such instances where they've used that law. Clutching a photo of her daughter, Jade Youngblood, tightly to her chest, Bernice Hawkins speaks directly to the man accused of killing her.
Josh. You are a vile person. This is a heinous crime. Jade loved you, and you took her from us.
Hawkins says she conceived Jade with Josh Youngblood when the two were in high school.
Josh was a come-and-go kind of person when it was convenient for him, and then as Jade got older, it was more of what could Jade do for Josh.
Even still, Hawkins says her daughter, who had a bleeding heart and big voice,
this is the last love song I'll ever write for you,
fought for the relationship.
She craved the love of her father, and I think she gave him a lot of exceptions and allowed him a lot of leniency in areas that other people probably would not.
This case is extremely disheartening because it goes against all decency.
Sang from Jake.
our love is alright, you are mine, I'ma let 'em know that, just in case they wanna play, I don't mind any bitch and they. We got that love they hate to see when we poppin', they know we poppin' all night, all night. You my homie lover, friend in the streets, but my little freak in the sheets. You be there when I'm in need, you complete me. Nobody can love me like you do. Fuck me, or ever mean what I mean to you. You're everything.
I love this Sabine, I'm glad that
The
you
most dangerous predator isn't a stranger lurking in shadows. It's often the person you've known your entire life. The person whose blood runs through your veins. The person you desperately want to love you back. For 27-year-old Jade Taylor Marie Youngblood, that person was her father, Joshua. Thanksgiving 2023 in Houston, Texas. While most families gathered around tables laden with turkey and gratitude, Jade was extending an olive branch to a man who had drifted in and out of her life, a father whose approval she had always craved despite his inconsistent presence. She invited him to her apartment in the Alief neighborhood, hoping to strengthen their bond over the holiday. She couldn't have known that within hours, she would take her last breath on her bedroom floor. What began as a night of reconnection transformed into a nightmare when Joshua arrived with more than just holiday wishes. He brought drugs, marijuana, what he claimed was cocaine and PCP, but which actually contained fentanyl, a synthetic opioid powerful enough to kill, with just a few grains. As Jade lay dying from the lethal cocktail her father had provided, Joshua didn't call 911. He didn't attempt to save his daughter's life. Instead, he turned his attention to Jade's unconscious friend, with intentions that reveal the darkest depths of human depravity. By the time paramedics arrived at 5 a.m., it was too late for Jade. Her friend, however, survived to tell a story so disturbing that it left even experienced law enforcement officials stunned. This isn't just a story about drugs or overdose. It's about the ultimate betrayal, a father who not only failed to protect his daughter, but actively caused her death and used the opportunity to commit further atrocities. What drives a parent to such unconscionable acts against their own child? And how did a holiday meant for gratitude become the setting for one of Houston's most heartbreaking crimes? Here at Crime Scene Exposed, we dive deep into the most infamous crimes, baffling disappearances, disturbing confessions, and twisted criminal minds from around the world. From high-profile murder trials to cold cases that still haunt investigators, we uncover the truth behind the crimes that shook the world. Whether it's mysterious vanishing acts, serial killers, or shocking courtroom revelations, we bring you detailed investigations, gripping storytelling, and in-depth analysis. If this is your first time joining us, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly investigations into cases that challenge our understanding of human nature. Have you ever trusted someone who completely betrayed that trust? Someone you thought would protect you at all costs? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we examine how Jade Youngblood's trust in her father led to the most devastating consequence imaginable. Born on July 17, 1996, in Houston, Texas, Jade Taylor Marie Youngblood was known for her infectious laughter and boundless compassion. Friends described her as the person who could light up any room, someone whose warmth drew people together naturally and effortlessly. She was a light in everyone's life. Her mother, Bernice Brooke Johnson, would later tell reporters, her voice breaking as she recalled her daughter's generous spirit. Jade's childhood in Houston was marked by creativity and connection. She developed a profound love for music early on, often singing for family gatherings and finding joy in self-expression. Animals held a special place in Jade's heart. She couldn't pass a stray without stopping to help, couldn't visit a friend without paying attention to their pets first. This empathy extended to people as well. Jade was known for going out of her way to help friends and even strangers, often putting others' needs before her own. By 2023, at age 27, Jade had worked various jobs throughout Houston. Though she had no children of her own, she maintained close bonds with her extended family and built a loyal circle of friends who valued her authenticity and kindness. But beneath Jade's joyful exterior lay a complicated pain, one centered around her relationship with her father, Joshua Youngblood. Joshua was what Bernice would later describe as a come-and-go kind of person in Jade's life. He appeared when it suited him, when he needed something, or when circumstances made fatherhood temporarily convenient. Then he would vanish again, leaving Jade to wonder what she had done wrong, why she wasn't enough to make him stay. Despite this pattern of abandonment, Jade maintained an almost inexplicable capacity for forgiveness. While others might have closed their hearts after years of disappointment, Jade kept hers open. She continued to seek her father's approval and affection well into adulthood, granting him chances that many in her life felt he didn't deserve. "Jade loved you," Bernice would later say, addressing Joshua directly after the tragedy, "and you took her from us." This longing for paternal connection would ultimately place Jade in a vulnerable position, one that Joshua would exploit with devastating consequences. Her trusting nature, the very quality that made her beloved by so many, became the avenue through which harm would find her. In the final months of her life, Jade maintained hope that her relationship with her father could improve. When Thanksgiving 2023 approached, she saw an opportunity for connection, a chance to create the kind of holiday memory with her father that she had always wanted but rarely experienced. She couldn't have known that her capacity for forgiveness, her willingness to open her door to the father who had repeatedly disappointed her, would lead to the end of her story rather than a new chapter. November 23, 2023. Thanksgiving Day in Houston, Texas. The city hummed with holiday activity as families gathered around tables, sharing meals and memories. In the Alif neighborhood, nestled between Bissonnet Street and Sinnott Road, Jade's apartment stood as one small point in the vast metropolitan landscape. For many, Thanksgiving represents family bonds and gratitude. For Jade Youngblood, this particular Thursday carried additional weight. It represented possibility. The possibility of strengthening a fragile relationship with her father, Joshua. The possibility of creating a holiday memory that didn't end in disappointment. Jade had prepared her apartment for the occasion. She had also invited a close friend to join them, perhaps as both companion and buffer. The presence of another person sometimes helped smooth interactions with her unpredictable father. As evening descended on Houston, Jade likely felt the familiar mixture of hope and anxiety that accompanied her father's visits. Would he actually show up? Would he be present, truly present, or distracted? Would this be one of the good times she could hold on to when he inevitably disappeared again? What made this invitation particularly poignant was its timing. Thanksgiving, a holiday centered around family and appreciation, offered the perfect backdrop for reconciliation. For Jade, who valued family connections deeply despite their complications, hosting her father represented more than a simple dinner. It was a declaration of continued faith in their relationship, a statement that past disappointments hadn't extinguished her hope. As she waited for Joshua's arrival that evening, Jade couldn't have anticipated that her gesture of inclusion would set in motion a sequence of events that would end her life before the night was over. That her apartment, decorated for a holiday celebrating gratitude, would become a crime scene by dawn. As Thanksgiving evening progressed, Joshua Youngblood finally arrived at Jade's apartment. What should have been a simple family gathering took a dark turn when he came bearing more than just his presence. Joshua brought various substances with him, marijuana, and what he claimed were cocaine and PCP. The exact time of his arrival isn't documented in police reports, but it was late evening when Joshua entered his daughter's home. The atmosphere likely shifted immediately. Instead of the traditional Thanksgiving activities, watching football, sharing memories, or enjoying leftovers, the night veered toward drug use. Joshua presented the substances casually, perhaps minimizing their danger or overstating their quality. What he didn't disclose, whether through deliberate deception or his own ignorance, was that the drugs contained fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. A substance so powerful that an amount smaller than a few grains of salt can prove fatal. For reasons we may never fully understand, Jade agreed to partake. Perhaps it was the desire to connect with her father on his terms. Perhaps it was peer pressure. Or perhaps, like many recreational drug users, she simply didn't understand the Russian roulette nature of street drugs in the age of fentanyl contamination. Jade's friend also consumed the substances Joshua provided. The three of them, father, daughter, and friend, engaged in what Joshua would later characterize as a night of drinking and drug use. What began as a holiday gathering transformed into something far more dangerous with each passing hour. The effects of fentanyl can manifest rapidly. Unlike some drugs that take time to impact the system, fentanyl can cause respiratory depression within minutes. Users often don't realize they've consumed it until it's too late, if they realize it at all. At some point during the night, both Jade and her friend began showing signs of opioid overdose. Their breathing likely became shallow and labored. Their pupils would have constricted to pinpoints. Their skin may have turned bluish or ashen as oxygen levels in their blood dropped dangerously low. These are the moments when immediate medical intervention can mean the difference between life and death. A call to 911. The administration of Narcan naloxone, an opioid antagonist that can temporarily reverse overdose effects. Basic life support measures while waiting for paramedics. Joshua Youngblood did none of these things. As his daughter's life ebbed away in her bedroom, as her friend lay unconscious and vulnerable, Joshua made choices that would later lead prosecutors to charge him not just with drug distribution, but with murder. Jade slipped deeper into unconsciousness, her respiratory system increasingly compromised by the lethal combination of fentanyl, alprazolam, Xanax, and alcohol that would later be identified in her autopsy. Her friend also lost consciousness, unable to help herself or Jade, completely vulnerable in the presence of a man who had already demonstrated a profound disregard for their well-being. The hours ticked by. No call for help came from the apartment. No neighbor heard cries of distress. In the quiet of that Thanksgiving night, as families across Houston slept off turkey dinners and gave thanks for their blessings, Jade Youngblood drew her final breaths. By the time the sky began lightening toward dawn, Jade was beyond help. Her body lay in her bedroom, another victim of America's fentanyl crisis, but with a twist more heartbreaking than most. The person who provided the fatal dose was an anonymous dealer or a stranger, but her father. The person who failed to seek help wasn't an acquaintance paralyzed by fear of legal consequences, but the man who had helped bring her into the world. The medical examiner would later determine that Jade died from a combination of fentanyl, alprazolam, and ethanol. Each substance on its own can depress the central nervous system. Together, they created a lethal synergy that her body couldn't overcome. While Jade's life slipped away, her friend remained unconscious, unaware of Jade's condition, and unable to protect herself from what would happen next. When she eventually regained consciousness in the early morning hours of November 24th, she would find herself in the bathtub, disoriented and partially undressed, with no memory of how she got there. And in the bedroom, she would make the horrific discovery that would set in motion a criminal investigation. Jade Youngblood, age 27, was dead. The Thanksgiving reunion she had hoped would strengthen family bonds had instead become her final gathering. As Jade lay unconscious in her bedroom, her breathing growing more shallow with each passing minute, her father made a decision that would compound this tragedy beyond measure. Rather than calling for emergency medical assistance that could have saved his daughter's life, Joshua Youngblood turned his attention to Jade's unconscious friend. The exact timeline of events during those dark hours remains partially obscured, known fully only to Joshua himself, but what investigators later pieced together from physical evidence and the survivor's testimony paints a picture of predatory opportunism at its most disturbing. With both women incapacitated by the substances he had provided, Joshua saw not a medical emergency demanding immediate action, but an opportunity to commit further harm. As his own daughter fought for her life in the next room, he sexually assaulted her unconscious friend, a woman who had trusted him enough to spend a holiday in his company. The assault occurred while the friend was completely vulnerable, unable to consent or resist in any way. Joshua took advantage of her drug-induced state, a state he had directly caused by providing the contaminated substances. The violation represented not just a crime against the individual woman, but a betrayal of the most fundamental human trust, the expectation of safety in the company of a friend's parent. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, Jade's condition continued to deteriorate. The combination of fentanyl, Xanax, and alcohol progressively suppressed her respiratory system. Her breathing became more irregular. Her heart rate slowed. Her body, starved of oxygen, began shutting down organ by organ. And still, no call for help came. Whether Joshua checked on his daughter during this time remains unknown. Whether he witnessed her deterioration and chose to do nothing, or simply ignored her completely while committing his assault, the end result was the same. Jade Taylor Marie Youngblood died alone in her bedroom, while her father, just feet away, committed a heinous crime against her friend. The night eventually gave way to early morning. Sometime after 5 a.m., Jade's friend began to regain consciousness. Her awakening was disorienting and terrifying. She found herself in the bathtub, her clothing disheveled, with no memory of how she had gotten there or what had happened during her unconscious hours. Confused and afraid, she managed to pull herself up. The apartment was quiet. Joshua was nowhere to be seen. Whether he had already fled or was simply in another room would later become a point of investigation. The friend, still affected by the drugs in her system, but conscious enough to move around, began searching for Jade. What she discovered in the bedroom would haunt her forever: Jade's lifeless body. Unresponsive, not breathing, already growing cold. The horror of finding her friend dead was compounded by her gradual realization that something had happened to her while she was unconscious. Despite her own trauma and the lingering effects of the drugs, the friend acted with remarkable presence of mind. She immediately sought help, contacting emergency services. Paramedics arrived at Jade's apartment just after 5 a.m. on November 24th, but was far too late for Jade. They pronounced her dead at the scene. For the friend, however, medical intervention came just in time. She was administered Narcan, which counteracted the opioid effects still threatening her life. The medication likely saved her from sharing Jade's fate. Once stabilized, she reported the sexual assault to authorities. She was transported to Ben Taub Hospital, where healthcare professionals conducted a forensic examination that would later provide crucial evidence against Joshua Youngblood. In the span of less than 12 hours, what began as a Thanksgiving gathering had transformed into a scene of death, sexual violence, and betrayal of the most fundamental kind. A father had not only failed to protect his daughter, he had actively contributed to her death and used the opportunity to commit further violence against another vulnerable young woman. The holiday meant to celebrate gratitude had instead become the backdrop for an unconscionable betrayal that would soon shock the entire Houston community. This case raises important questions about trust and family bonds. The relationship between Jade and her father reveals how deeply we can yearn for connection, even when past experiences suggest we should be cautious. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about vulnerability and exploitation within family structures. What makes this case particularly devastating is how Joshua weaponized his daughter's desire for his approval and affection. He exploited her trust not once, but repeatedly, culminating in the ultimate betrayal on Thanksgiving night. What state or country are you watching from, and have similar cases occurred there? The fentanyl crisis has touched communities worldwide, but the combination of drug-facilitated death and familial betrayal makes this case particularly shocking. We'd also like to hear your thoughts on warning signs people should watch for in their relationships. What red flags might indicate someone is exploiting your trust rather than deserving it? What boundaries should never be crossed, even with family? Your insights could help others recognize dangerous situations before they escalate. If you're finding value in our detailed investigation, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who might benefit from this important discussion. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these crucial stories to light.
Now, 2 years after his daughter's death, Youngblood is charged not only with sexual assault, but Jade's murder.
Joshua Youngblood, will you please stand up?
The same year Jade died, the Texas legislature passed a law allowing for murder charges in cases where fentanyl distribution results in death. Harris County District Attorney's Office First Assistant Chandler Raines says Jade's case is the 8th such charge. HCDAO has filed.
Thank you for everything, for not letting the case die with his lies, but to keep pursuing. And so he was caught.
The investigation into Jade Youngblood's death moved quickly once authorities understood the circumstances. Joshua Youngblood became the immediate focus of law enforcement attention after Jade's friend provided her account of the night's events and underwent a forensic examination at Ben Taub Hospital. Police arrested Joshua and brought him in for questioning. During initial interviews, he attempted to distance himself from responsibility. He denied providing the drugs that killed his daughter, instead claiming he had merely warned Jade against Xanax use. According to his version of events, he had simply fallen asleep after drinking with his daughter and her friend. This narrative quickly collapsed under scrutiny. The surviving victim's testimony directly contradicted Joshua's claims, and forensic evidence collected from the scene and during the sexual assault examination further undermined his story. Investigators found his account inconsistent with physical evidence and timeline reconstructions. The Harris County District Attorney's Office, working with the Harris County Sheriff's Office and the Drug Enforcement Administration, built a case that resulted in 2 serious charges against Joshua Youngblood: murder and aggravated sexual assault. The murder charge was particularly significant as it represented one of the first applications of a new Texas law passed in 2023. This legislation specifically allows prosecutors to pursue murder charges against individuals who knowingly provide fentanyl that results in death. Prior to this law, such cases might have been prosecuted as drug distribution with death resulting, a serious but lesser charge than murder. Texas legislators had created this new legal pathway in direct response to the fentanyl crisis ravaging communities across the state. The law recognizes the unique danger posed by fentanyl, a substance so potent that users often have no idea they're consuming it until it's too late. By elevating these cases to murder charges, Texas signaled a new approach to accountability for those who distribute this deadly substance. Jade's case became the 8th fentanyl murder charge in Harris County since the passage of the 2023 law. At a press conference announcing the charges, officials from multiple agencies described the case as appalling and heinous, noting that the combination of the fatal overdose and sexual assault made it particularly disturbing. The aggravated sexual assault charge stemmed from Joshua's actions against Jade's unconscious friend. Under Texas law, sexual assault becomes aggravated when the victim is physically unable to resist or give consent, precisely the situation Joshua exploited after providing drugs that rendered the woman unconscious. Following his arrest, Joshua Youngblood was held on a $150,000 bond as the case began moving through the court system. The substantial bond amount reflected both the severity of the charges and the potential flight risk he posed. Throughout the legal proceedings, Jade's mother, Bernice Brooke Johnson, spoke publicly about her daughter's death. Her statements revealed both profound grief and a measure of relief that charges had been filed. In one particularly powerful moment addressed directly to Joshua, she said, "Jade loved you, and you took her from us." Bernice described her daughter as loving and trusting, someone who had always sought her father's approval, even when his actions suggested he didn't deserve it. Her public statements helped humanize Jade beyond the circumstances of her death, reminding the community that behind the headlines was a young woman with dreams, relationships, and a future that had been stolen from her. As the case progressed through preliminary hearings, the prosecution continued building their case, gathering additional evidence, and preparing for what promised to be an emotionally charged trial that would test the boundaries of the new Texas fentanyl law. Jade Youngblood's death exists within 2 intersecting crises that extend far beyond her individual case. The first is America's devastating fentanyl epidemic, which has become the leading cause of overdose deaths nationwide. The second is the profound trauma of familial betrayal, a violation of trust that leaves wounds across generations. Fentanyl has transformed the landscape of drug use in the United States. This synthetic opioid, originally developed for pain management in cancer patients, has infiltrated the illicit drug supply at an alarming rate. Its potency, 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine, means that even microscopic amounts can prove fatal. Many victims, like Jade, never knowingly choose to take fentanyl. Instead, they consume what they believe to be cocaine, heroin, or prescription medications, unaware of the lethal contamination. The statistics tell a grim story. Synthetic opioid fatalities have skyrocketed in recent years, with tens of thousands of Americans dying annually. What makes these deaths particularly tragic is their preventability. Naloxone Narcan can reverse opioid overdoses if administered quickly enough, as it did for Jade's friend. But for the medication to work, someone must recognize the overdose and take action, something Joshua Youngblood deliberately chose not to do for his daughter. Beyond the chemical danger lies the psychological devastation of familial betrayal. Jade's case represents an extreme example of a parent exploiting rather than protecting their child. The betrayal she suffered, dying from drugs provided by her father while he sexually assaulted her friend, represents a violation of the most fundamental trust humans develop, the expectation that parents will protect rather than harm. The Houston community responded to Jade's death with shock and grief. Local advocacy groups focused on substance abuse prevention and support for sexual assault survivors incorporated her story into their educational outreach. On social media, community members mourn Jade, describing her as kind, trusting, and full of potential. Law enforcement officials used the case to highlight the dangers of fentanyl and the importance of testing substances before use. The Harris County District Attorney's Office pointed to Jade's death as a tragic example of why they would continue aggressive prosecution of fentanyl distributors under the new murder statute. Religious leaders and community organizers in Houston held vigils not just for Jade, but for all victims of the fentanyl crisis, creating spaces for collective grief and calls to action. These gatherings emphasize both the personal tragedy of each loss and the systemic failures that allow such deaths to continue. Jade Youngblood's tragic death offers critical lessons that could save lives. First and foremost is the deadly reality of fentanyl contamination in street drugs. A substance that looks identical to cocaine or other drugs can contain lethal amounts of fentanyl, undetectable without testing strips. This hidden danger makes even casual, recreational drug use potentially fatal. Equally important is learning to identify toxic family dynamics. Jade's relationship with her father followed a pattern: inconsistent presence, broken promises, and a child continually seeking approval from a parent unwilling or unable to provide consistent care. These patterns don't typically escalate to murder, but they cause significant harm even in less extreme cases. Healthy support systems might have created different outcomes. Friends who recognize when someone is repeatedly drawn back to harmful relationships can offer perspective and alternatives. Communities with accessible addiction services, mental health resources, and family counseling provide pathways to healthier relationships. Prevention requires both individual awareness and community action. Testing strips that detect fentanyl, widely available Narcan, and education about overdose symptoms save lives. Meanwhile, support groups for those with absent or harmful parents help break cycles of seeking validation from those who cause harm. Jade's story reminds us that prevention isn't just about avoiding drugs, it's about building communities where people find safety, support, and belonging without endangering themselves to obtain it. Jade Taylor Marie Youngblood's life was defined by far more than its tragic end. She was a young woman who loved music and animals, who showed compassion to strangers, who maintained hope despite repeated disappointments. Her capacity for forgiveness, while ultimately exploited, speaks to a character of remarkable strength and optimism. Her legacy now extends beyond those who knew her personally. Through her story, others may recognize dangerous situations before they turn deadly. Parents may have difficult conversations with their children about drug safety. Friends might intervene when they see loved ones caught in cycles of toxic relationships. If this investigation has impacted you, please subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed and hit the notification bell. Your support allows us to continue bringing these important stories to light. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your perspective might help someone else processing similar experiences. Next week, we'll examine another case that challenges our understanding of trust and betrayal, exploring how predators exploit vulnerability in unexpected ways. Before you go, we'd like to hear from you. What do you think should be the punishment for parents who betray their children this way? Is our justice system equipped to address the unique horror of familial betrayal, or do we need new approaches to these devastating crimes? Thank you for joining us in remembering Jade and the lessons her story teaches us all.